This is my 22nd year to stand up here on Children's Home Sunday. And I always begin by thanking this congregation because of your love and your compassion, your support. And for me personally, you as individuals and you as a congregation have supported me in my leadership role at the Children's Home for all these years, for 21 years, since August or October of 1995. And so today I get to introduce the new sheriff in town. And I'm excited about that. About 2.5 years ago, under the leadership of Jerry Hoover and Dr. Rodney Thomas, the board of directors initiated a succession planning committee and worked very diligently and began at a point of just praying and saying, Lord, we have no idea who you have raised up, but we trust that you will make that person known to us. And so over the process of a couple of years, this committee worked and prayed and diligently sought. We received applications from, I think, Texas and 6 other states, and that committee had to winnow through that. They interviewed 6 people, 3 from here in Lubbock, and selected 3 that were outside of Lubbock. And it was interesting because the second interview was this guy sitting behind me, and it was obvious that the next 4 guys were absolutely compared to Jimmy Moore. They didn't have a chance to stand on their own because they just didn't have legs under them quite like Jimmy Moore had. And it was so obvious in that process that God had raised up a godly man to take over the reins of the Children's Home of Lubbock. And so just a way of introduction, Jimmy and his lovely wife, Shelley. Shelley, raise your hand. Yeah. When they finished Lubbock Christian University, they came to work at the Children's Home as house parents, and Jimmy ran recreation. And then he told me one day, he said, Lynn, I'll never get to pursue my dream of coaching in the NBA or NCAA, I think it was, if I stay here at the Children's Home. So he went off to Abilene to coach. And he coached at ACU and in Abilene high schools, and he came back to Lubbock and coached in Coronado and Estacado and Lubbock Christian University girls basketball, served as the first full-time athletic director at LCU, moved into school administration with LISD, working with kids a lot like our kids, O.L. Slayton, Dunbar Middle School, Estacado High School, served in the central office of LISD for a couple of years. So well prepared. He's a product of West Texas, growing up in Morton, a graduate alum of LCU, working with kids, working with staff. He's excelled at administration. He has a tremendous background, but more importantly, if you add to his compassion, his intellect, his administrative capacity, his vision, he's a man of God. And more than one person told us at Greenlawn that he is the elder's elder, and has served as an elder at Greenlawn Church of Christ for 6 years, and just carries a passion spiritually, coupled with all the tools that he's developed over the years. And so it's exciting for me. As of August 1st, this past August 1st, Jimmy Moore is the new president, the 4th president of the Children's Home of Lubbock in our almost 63-year history. And I'm excited and proud to present my good friend, my buddy, my brother, Jimmy Moore, to you this morning.
Well, first of all, good morning. I hope you can hear me. This guy here to my left, he's a friend, he's a brother, and he's a supporter. And I don't know what it's going to be like when that day comes where Lynn is nowhere around to kind of help me and guide me through. I think he stays away from me intentionally now because he knows I'm going to call upon him at any moment. But let's give him an opportunity. Am I on? The green light's on. I'm going to have to get to the mic. Test, test. That better? Okay. I may be back and forth. But let's give this guy an opportunity done at the home. Man, I'm going to feel like a caged animal now. I like to move around, but I'll be okay. Test, test, test. I'm back. Okay. First of all, you always try to think of what could you say to a congregation that has been basically a foundation of what the work is all about at the home. What could you possibly say? And I started thinking, because here recently, I realized that trauma is real. For years, we had no idea how to really deal with trauma. Each and every one of us, you're sitting out there and you got some things that still to this day, no matter how old you are, still affects you. And I know I deal with things constantly, and I try to figure out, Jimmy, what's the best way to deal with this? How do you cope? What I started calling this years ago, because I heard a speaker come through, Jimmy Cabrera. Jimmy was brought up in Muleshoe, Texas, pretty much with nothing. But he wrote a book a while back, probably 2002 when it hit, and it was basically, what's in your backpack? So this morning, I've titled the talk is, what's in their backpack? And so we're talking about the kids that we serve. What do they bring to us? Just in case you're visiting and you don't know much about the home, I have to go back to 1951 on a Friday night and think about individuals who went to watch a football game, but while they're there, they focus solely on what could they do better to serve this community of Lubbock. And the thought came to fruition years later to basically start a children's home. And as you heard earlier, out in the cotton field in the middle of basically nowhere. And then I have to fast forward. I have to start thinking about today, if those forefathers and mothers who put all their hard work and desire into making sure that they were going to take care of kids in this community and surrounding areas, what would they look at now? If they could see us now where we're at, what would be the story they would tell us? So if you hadn't had the opportunity, Wings of Compassion, book written by Brother White, wife, Vera White. If you hadn't had an opportunity to read it. I've read it 3 times now. And every time I read it, I find something new. And so that's where I start today. What's in their backpack? Most of the kids we get come to us because parents have failed. Parents have failed to provide for their needs, which is a form of abuse, is neglect. And so when I start talking about neglect and abuse, we're talking about health care, supervision, clothing, nutrition, housing, as well as their physical, emotional, social needs. And I can easily say, here's spiritual. That's what those kids are coming to us without. Causes of some of these things, as we know today, could be poverty. It could be that chain that has repeated over and over again because of substance abuse, domestic violence, as I came through, unemployment, unplanned pregnancy, single parenting. We could just go on and on with the list. So basically, our kids have gotten confused. They're coming to us probably serving 2 masters. And as well as we know, you can't serve 2 masters. They're coming to us with all these worldly things that have happened because of what their parents have experienced. But at the same time, they've been told that there's better things out there. And some come to us with just one story. And that's the story of the world. That's the story of hurt, mistrust, and basically just what Satan wants us to feel all the time. But we know the Bible speaks totally against these things. In Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 through 8, have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who thought he was in the form of God, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God as a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even death on a cross. So when I start talking about backpacks, some of you are thinking about hiking trails. Some of you are thinking about school. But let's use that metaphorically. Let's think about the things that we throw into our everyday lives that we have to deal with. What's in there? You'll get to hear later what some of our kids brought to the table when they were at the home 20-something years ago. Now they're adults. But you know God has a different idea for us. The world says if you don't look out for oneself, then you're a failure. Who will? Why should we empty ourselves, the world will tell you. Imagine if we kept everything, all the hurt, the pain, the deceit, the depression, in that backpack. Over the period of time, it'll get so heavy that we can't do anything with it. So we just heard where Paul has said, empty yourselves. And so we're going to talk about emptying that backpack. What does it look like 20-something years later? We all know God's grace is so big. We want to empty that backpack and fill it with God's grace and mercy and the things that he had offered for us. Those things that's going to last to eternity. You see, we can't make it on the trail of life with a heavy backpack. Ask Lynn Harms, ask Brooks. He'll tell you if you hadn't heard the stories. We got to change what's in our backpacks. And so as I talk about this morning, I have to reflect to what was in mine. A lot of people don't know my story, and I don't share it all the time, but I can tell you this. Jimmy Moore was something that the world would have told you would have been a statistic, and there's no way in the world he'd be standing here today. Jimmy Moore has in his backpack to be an introvert. I do not get up and speak in front of people. And some of you going, there's no way. Yes, that's the truth. I would rather be somewhere else listening to someone talk to me or reading a book. But the Spirit from within has called me to stand firm and profess the things that could help others. And that's basically that Jesus Christ died for us. And he also given us the identity that we can make it through anything, no matter how heavy a backpack may be, there's a way to lighten it. You see, the home's mission is manifesting Christ through excellence in child care, to help the children reevaluate what they are carrying in their backpacks and help them to lighten the load by emptying the junk in order to make the journey through life. That's our mission. We replace neglect with joy and suffering. And as I say that, I'm going to take a little turn for you right now. I'm going to read some letters that were sent to me from kids who are outside the children's home now, that are out with their own families, raising their own families. Hear their history. Hear what you have provided year after year to help them be a successful Christian out in the world. This is from Maurice. Hello. I was placed at the children's home in 1983 and left in 1996. Sometimes it was hard being without biological parents, but I grew to love it at the home. It was a good thing that I and my brothers and sister had the opportunity to be loved there. I never thought I would graduate high school, but I did, and I went on to college. I remember the good times playing basketball with my dad, Jimmy, when I was there. I love Jimmy and Shelley for all that they did for me through those years. I'm also very thankful to the Children's Home of Lubbock, and I always love you. John. My struggles include depression and low self-esteem. I believe it was something that we all felt. It was overwhelming at times. I'm a strong proponent of dealing with things before they become a problem. I was ill prepared for the world outside. When I left to go to LCU, I had no idea how to take care of myself. All of the decisions my peers in the world were making, I was developmentally behind in them. For instance, banking and credit, I was an absolute idiot. Laugh out loud. Thank God I figured that out. Emotionally, I still wear the scars of the orphan heart. I still struggle with that. My favorite memories include the guys, all of us playing basketball at the Maybe or walking out in the field together as Roosevelt Eagles. I remember fondly hanging out with Jimmy and Shelley. Although I never lived in their cottage, I knew I was always welcome there. Maurice, Rodney, Robert, and James, we were all tight. I often think of them and still consider them my brothers. The camaraderie of the foster child is one of the things that make a hard situation more bearable. It allows you to find community and a sense of purpose, often in times when you're desperately searching for those things. I remember working with Mary in the commissary and taking pride in the fact that my work mattered and singing with Jenny for the UMC fundraiser. That leads me to the best part of my stay at the Children's Home of Lubbock, my relationship with Jesus. It was cultivated by Tom and Julie and watered by the church family at Broadway in South Plains. The relationship I have with Jesus is directly a result of those feelings of hopelessness and abandonment that we struggle with. I found not only my king, but my best friend, a man acquainted with sorrow. I was able to relate. My relationship has deepened to now understand that I'm an heir, a dearly loved child of the Most High, that my destiny and my bloodline is born of sacrifice and grace. Without that guidance, God only knows where I would be. I am profoundly indebted to the Children's Home of Lubbock in so many ways. I would love to talk about ways I could help. I have several suggestions, not as an armchair quarterback, but as a grateful receiver of grace and love that the Children's Home of Lubbock provided. Be blessed. Jeanette. I was at the Children's Home at the age of 6 until 18. I struggled with being embarrassed about why I was placed there, and it was always tough trying to explain to my classmates. I was fortunate to have the same house parents during my entire stay. My fondest memory is Christmas time and how the community would come together and make sure we all had a wonderful holiday. I remember the gym was a great place to relax and have fun. We would skate, play basketball, lift weights, shoot pool, and play arcade games. Now as an adult, I have no regrets, and I'm thankful for my experiences at the home. I was taught how to be independent, how to love myself, and most importantly, how to have a relationship with the Lord. Jody, and just in case I tear up, I've called on Lynn to be my backup, so just put a little pressure on her. I love being at the Children's Home of Lubbock, but not at first. I had already been through 4 years of foster care. Once I was released from foster care, I thought I was going home to stay with my family, which consisted of my mother, my sister Brandy, and a new stepdad. Things quickly went south. I learned at a young age not to trust or love anyone. My mom pawned me off again. I felt like I was not loved, basically like a piece of trash. I had my sister, and that was all I needed. Brandy and I were placed together at first, then separated. I was a scared and angry kid who had no direction in life and no role model. Then I learned that there was a farm at the home. I met Alvin, who is still one of my biggest heroes to this day. He showed me love and was a great teacher. He taught me about God and also how to drive a tractor. I love this family, but I knew it was not really mine. Around this time, we received new house parents, Jimmy and Shelley. These are two, and still, they are my mom and dad. I really learned from them what a family should be. I now have biracial parents, and I think 6 older brothers, which was 7, and a beautiful baby sister named Jada. I learned to lean on my brothers when I was down and needed advice. I looked up to Jimmy and Shelley, and I still do to this day. I think we were at the Children's Home for 3 short years. I took the things that I learned from there and tried to teach them to my own children, to not judge a person by race, but by their actions, and to always trust in God. I know I would not be the man I am today if I had not been placed at the Children's Home. Jenny. I was at the Children's Home from age 4 to 18. I briefly left for 2 years in a temporary adoption, but missing my oldest sister proved to be too much, and I wanted to be with her. I was involved in many things at school. I was very athletic, involved in band. I was a cheerleader for 1 year as well, but I never felt normal. Everyone at the school knew I was at the children's home. At basketball games, while I shined on the court, it didn't matter because I never felt like I had someone there for me. I was not allowed to attend homecoming dances, and it was not until I went to Nell's office one day and pleaded with her to change the rule that anyone was allowed to attend the prom. I'm not sure that changed because of me, but I did get to go to the senior prom. I never felt like I fit in, which swayed my self-confidence and self-esteem. When I became a senior in high school, the campus changed the cottages to all girls and all boys. I was moved to foster care. At first, I hated every single moment of it because it was one more person to get used to, a new set of rules, a new way in which someone wanted things done, and it was momentarily devastating. I was separated from Brandy, and I felt alone. That year, I dropped out of everything that had kept me going, that kept me motivated, that kept me distracted. I quit basketball, band, and even cheer. I enrolled in a work program at school, going to school half a day and working half a day because I felt like all the other things were pointless, and I needed to figure out how I was going to survive and live beyond high school. I felt like I needed to get in the proper mindset. You see, back then, not all kids were wards of the state. These events lowered my self-esteem and self-confidence. Unknowingly, when people find themselves lonely, afraid, and insecure, they reach out for comfort and welcome it unguarded, which comes from a good source, or worse, a bad one. I found my comfort in a boy. A month later, I graduated high school, I became pregnant with my oldest daughter, and the comfort I sought in this boy became unhealthy and harmful to me. Some of my fondest memories were Brandy, who is practically my sister, and with whom I still am very close to this day. We used to stay up late on summer nights and make mixtapes, hit records, one-hit wonders. I sang at many fundraising events, worked on the farm with Alvin, and learned a very good work ethic, which I still contribute to him today. I have some awesome house parents through the years, Jack and Wileen, who treated me like one of their own, a couple who took our entire cottage to Disney World one summer. Brandy's also in that memory. And of course, my favorites, Jimmy and Shelley, and I didn't know this was gonna happen. It was probably just Shelley, really, who let me be the too mature for my age self, supported me in every single thing I did, let me always think outside of the box since I didn't live in a conventional one, and encouraged me endlessly. And then there was Pat Stumbo, who had a program for girls that I learned a lot. I have fond memories of lifeguarding at the pool, going on field trips during the summer, going to movies in the evening as a cottage or with another cottage, and living with Grace. Long story short, all that I have been through has made me stronger, and I am thankful for that. But when I left, it was as if I went out into the world completely alone and had to struggle to learn, to live, and survive. I wasn't always a ward of the states. And some people receive free college. It didn't apply to me. I always thought my daughter was a blessing in disguise. I think if I didn't have her, what would I be doing today? She became my motivation and my will to move forward. She is now in the Air Force, and I'm incredibly proud of her. I was fortunate to meet and marry someone that loves me, even with my brokenness, and has been a great dad to our 2 girls. I started working at Tech and I still work there today at the Health Science Center. And I just strive to be the best I can at whatever I'm doing at the moment. Right now, I work, I'm a mom and a wife. I count my blessings, and I am thankful for the things I have. The children's home gave me a path to God, to what is right and wrong, good memories, bad memories, safety and security. It saved my siblings and me many times. We have contemplated how life would have turned out had we not ended up at the home. This brought back a flood of memories. I actually kind of got a little choked up and had to come back to it, but it's good to review and look back and reflect. Last but not least, Brandy. This was emotional for me. I cried just thinking about it. I tried to keep it short and sweet. I love you and think of you all daily. I was 11 years old when I went to the home in 1989. I had already been in foster care and foster homes at age 4 and lived with 4 different families without my mother. Being away from her was not my struggle. My struggle was being voluntarily placed in the children's home. It was her choice to leave me and my brother behind as she went on to have a new life with her husband. It hurt my heart to be discarded. Little did I know the children's home would give me the tools to start the healing process. In my 4-year stay, I gained far more than I lost. I never knew my father prior to arriving at the home and never had a full-time mom. I did gain house parents. As a matter of fact, I had 5 sets of parents through my stay. I learned something from each of them and felt loved. We lived with other children, making us instant families. I learned to serve others while working together to get daily chores completed. I learned the value of hard work and how to set goals while working in the cotton fields with Alvin and at the recreational center. Learning the value of working to meet my needs felt empowering and gave me lifelong self-management tools. I accepted Jesus in my heart and was baptized in the home's pool. God became a part of me and is still with me today. I cannot pinpoint one singular moment, but the life lessons gained will carry me through anything that comes my way. Today, I have 2 beautiful children of my own and have been married for 21 years to my God-given soulmate. I have had the same best friend for 27 years, by the way. We were roommates at the home. She was my big sister. We depended on each other and shared an unbreakable bond. Looking back, I can clearly see how God's hands was leading and protecting and loving me all through this. He uses the bad experience to make me a better parent in person, clearly showing me what not to do. I have never done drugs or been drunk. At such a young age, I could see the damage that these things had on a person and families that I love. Hugs for everyone, Brandy. She later wrote back and wanted a little extra. Thanks, Jimmy. You and Shelley have been a light for so many of God's children and a source of hope. You allowed broken children into your hearts. Let me love on Jada as if she was my own little sister. I do regret not being able to see her grow up with Jalen. It just goes to show you it doesn't take $1 million to make a difference in the world. You just have to show up and love as he has loved you. My gift from God was horrible memory that when it comes to painful things, I truly do not remember all the bad because he washed me clean. He helped me to forgive my mother, and I have learned that we can have a relationship with boundaries. I do see now how most of the children had to endure what was next and didn't get to thrive. The children are often the first hurt and the last to be thought of by broken parents. That struggle we endure is the cycle being broken. I think it is imperative that we have to lean on God to bring things, I think it's imperative that we have to lean on God to bring ourselves out of it so that we are never destined to repeat our parents' mistakes. My mother was also at the children's home. I don't know for how long, but I don't think it was long enough for her to heal. I know I have also been crying for 2 days now, and I am sure you are reading many stories that would make you want to pass on this. I know you will take this challenge and share our stories in a way that helps others break free. We don't often get to see how God uses us in others' lives. You're getting a glimpse at it now. Well done, good and faithful servant. Love you lots, Mom and Dad. As you can see, I've been crying for about a week and a half. Every time I go back and I look over these, it reminds me of our intent and what we do and what we're called to help others. These kids who are now grown-ups and have their own families had things in their backpacks, folks, that most people would give up on. Most people would try to carry by themselves. But they came to the home not knowing if they would ever be able to empty those things. But because of you, and the people that work at the home that you support, they're able to tell their stories. They're able to raise their kids on how not to do things. They're able to help others. So you're very important to that work. So I want to apologize from my standpoint. You know, it's been 20-something years since I sat in this auditorium. As I told you before, I read the book 3 times, and it'll probably be a 4th pretty soon. And I never really grasped of how much Broadway has meant to the ministry at the home. But today I can stand here and I can say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not acknowledging you when you did all that you could possibly do to help out people. And I think this may sum it up. I have here, there are so many needs, so many calls and times of energy and finances, and there's often so much ingratitude among those who are doing what's right. That's not easy all the time in a fallen world, especially when it goes on and no one really notices you. So I notice you today. I want you to hear that from me. I notice what you do, how you do it, and I appreciate you for that. Paul tells us in Galatians 6:10, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those people who belong to the house of faith. You do that, and I appreciate you for it. You go above and beyond of what is called for to help kids in trauma, people who work with those kids in trauma, and for legacies of families to be built from this day forward. You're a part of that, so I thank you. Doing good, taking out all the evil of the world and filling them with Galatians 5:19 and following, which is the fruits of the Spirit, in order for these families to thrive. So we thank you for that. Men who are prepared to come forward and help out with the collection, you can at this time. I, once again, thank you from the bottom of my heart, with all my soul, my might, and my strength, for what you do. If you would have told me 20-some odd years ago that I wouldn't be in NBA coaching, that I would be standing here today talking about kids that I had an impact in their lives with, I probably wouldn't believe you. But you know, Lord has his plans for us. And I appreciate that we crossed paths today. And I appreciate the paths that we'll cross later. And I want to be as much as part of Broadway and the mission at the home as you allow me to be. So I thank you. But I do want to pray over this collection because it's the appropriate time. So if you would bow with me. Our Father, we've heard today what many wanted to hear in the desert, what many wanted to feel that were in the desert, that there is a bright future, there's hope. And Lord, it's short 25 years later, it's hard for me to believe, standing here, that the whole time your hand has been in this. You knew it from day one. Lord, there are so many kids, and there will continue to be so many children that will be serviced because you allow us to service them at the home. So today, as I stand here, I just ask you that you may continue to be with us when we grow weary, when we grow tired, and then things become mundane of doing the same things over and over again, that we remember that each and every soul is important to your kingdom. Lord, I thank you for Broadway. I thank you for those who were before us and those who will come after. That this ministry would always be something that's near and dear to their heart. And Lord, that we may think outside the box, as has been mentioned this morning by one of the former students. That we can think of ways that Satan tries to keep away from us that we can serve even better. So we thank you. We thank you for your son, Jesus, who poured himself out, who emptied himself and came to this earth, Lord, and gave up his life And so as our men are here this morning and we're the arm and the feet of yours, Lord, just show us the way. Show us the way. Thank you so much for your son, Jesus Christ. In his name we do pray. Amen.